Alright, so in this tutorial I'm going to do the song Silent Night. This was one by request by one of my students, so wanted to put this out there. So this song is actually fairly simple, great song for a beginner. It's really only going to use 3 chords, so let's just jump right into it and start talking about the piece so we can get you playing it. Alright, so first let's just talk about the chords that we're going to use, because if we could become familiar with these chords, playing the piece will be much easier. So the chords we're going to play is going to be a C chord, which is C, E, G. Now I'm not going to get into any explanations of chords. I have other videos for that, so today we're just going to, right, C, E, G, right? And just so you can see where I'm lined up, this is middle C. So I'm just 1 octave down from middle C. Pinky on C, middle finger on E, thumb on G. So that's going to be one of the chords we use. We're also going to use an F chord. So from our C chord, to get to the F chord, we can keep our C here, then use our F here, and then just slide our thumb up to A. And then we can have our F chord right there. This is an F chord in an inversion. Once again, not going to explain much about inversions, have other videos for that, but right, we're going to just use this F chord here. So right, so we go from our C chord, we can get to our F chord pretty simply by just sliding our thumb over 1. Now the other chord we're going to use here is the G chord. So the G chord, we are going to just do a similar move to the F chord, but instead of going up with our thumb, we're just going to go down with our pinky. So what we're going to be able to do from our C chord here to get to our G chord, we just slide our pinky down to B, and you can let these other 4 fingers, meaning not your thumb, also all slide down one, right? So if I'm at C, I'm going to let these 4 fingers all slide down so I can play the G chord of B with my pinky, D with my middle finger, G with my thumb, right? So there's our G chord. So we have our C chord, our F chord, and our G chord. So those, I'm just going to call those chords out when we're playing rather than explain, play this note, this note, this note every time. I'm just going to say this time we use a C chord in this measure, or an F chord, and so on. All right, so now we can get into the right hand. So I'm going to start off the right hand up here with my thumb on E, index finger on G, middle finger on A, ring finger on B, pinky on C. This should allow us to play almost the whole song from this position. We will have to eventually shift up, but we'll get there soon. All right, last thing about this piece is that it is in 3/4 time, right? So that is a 3/4 time signature, meaning there's only 3 beats in a measure rather than 4. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's how we would count the song. All right, so let's play it through, and we will just go through the first part here. Alright, so that's the first 4 measures there. So let's talk about what we're doing. We're doing G, A, G, E, and then again, G, A, G, E. And then we're just doing a C chord for every 3 beats, right? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And if you're familiar with eighth notes, we are using an eighth note on A, right? So if we were counting this out, we would count 1 and 2 and 3 and 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 just like that. Then, so that's part 1, right? So it's just the same part kind of repeated twice there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to stretch pretty much just our pinky up to D for the next part, and then I'm going to switch my left hand to that G chord here, and we're going to play a G chord at the same time as D with our pinky. D, D, B, B, just like that, and then we're going to go to C and switch back to our C chord, C, C, G. Okay, so let's call that part 2, so let's talk about that, right? So it's, once again, G chord with D, 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 B, B, and then switch to your C chord and play C, C, G. Okay, so let's put that all together right now. And once again, as I always say, you can pause the video, just work on part 2 by itself, just work on part 1 by itself, and then see if you can combine them. Come back to the video and try with me. So here we go. Okay, so that is the first 2 parts. So let's get into the next part, part 3 we'll call it. So for this part, we're going to switch to our F chord here, and then we're going to play A. So we can keep our hand kind of in this G position, right? So we started here. Let's just kind of review to see how our hand got here. We started in this position here. I'm just going to play it fast so we can go through it. Then when I stretched my pinky up to D, after I played D, I let my hand kind of move into a G position here where I'm on G, A, B, C, and D. That allows me to get all the notes in part 2, right? Now for part 3, I'm going to stay in that same position, and you'll see why, right? So we switch to our F chord here for part 3 and play A. A, C, B, A. And then we go back to our C chord and play G, A, G, E. All right, so you see I kind of had to do a little turn there. We'll talk about that. All right, so let's talk about part 3, right? So A, C, B, A. That's that same little 8th note there. C, B, A. It's a little quicker there. If you're familiar with the tune, you don't have to worry about 8th notes and things like that. You can kind of just go off how you know it sounds, right? So once again, part 3. A, C, B, A. And then our thumb's going to hit G as we switch to our C chord, back to our C chord. G. And then we're going to play A, G, E. But rather than using thumb, index finger, thumb, and crossing with our index like I did earlier, what we can do is play G with our thumb and then slide our middle finger over to play A, and then your index can take G, and then your thumb can take E, and look at this, you're back in the same position you started the song in, right? So we saw our hand went here to there, and back, right? So part 3, one more time, nice and slow. And now, great part about the song, part 4 is exactly the same as part 3. So it's an exact repeat. So all I'm going to do is, rather than, once again, this is a little tip here for, you know, which finger to use. You may naturally think, oh, I'm going to use my ring finger on A here to do this, but if you do that, you're going to kind of get stuck, so it may be a little challenging. So what I would recommend is, after you play the E with your thumb and you go into part 4, just bring these fingers all up, let them stretch, and then start it over. And now I'm back in that G position, and I play the same thing. All right, so now we've got parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's really only about 2 more parts left. So let's review everything we got so far, okay? So I'm going to play through it nice and slow. Once again, pause the video if you need to work on parts 3 and 4 alone, and then you can come back to this. So here we are doing parts 1 through 4. Alright, so now we get to part 5. Part 5's similar to part 2, but not exactly the same. So it's similar in that we are going to stretch our pinky again to D and switch to the G chord to start it, right? So we're going to do D, but then we're going to need to play D, F, D, B, right? So that's a little weird for our hand, right? Because I just stretched my pinky up to D, and I don't want to have to go like that. That doesn't feel natural. So here's what we can do. Because we're going to hit D twice, so it's going to go D, D, F, D, B. So what I'm going to do, right, is we ended here, and then part 5 is going to start. We're going to stretch our pinky up to D, get to the G chord here. The second time I play D, I'm going to let my ring finger hit it. And then I can get F, D, B. And then my middle finger is here for C. We're going to play C and switch back to our C chord. And then stay on our C chord and press E. Okay, so that's part 5 right there, right? So. Okay, and now that'll bring us to part 6. Let's just do part 6 while we're here. We're going to keep our C chord, and check this out, right? I'm going to play C with my ring finger as I play the C chord, C, then I'm going to play G with my index finger, G, E, and then this is important here, I'm going to go back to G, but I'm going to bring my pinky over to play it, and I'm going to switch to my G chord. G, F, D, and then you're going to end by playing C with the C chord, like that. Okay, so let's look at that last part again, right? So we ended part 4 here, and then I'm going to use my ring finger on C, C, G, E, G, F, D, C with the C chord. All right, so let's just play parts 5 and 6 together, and then we'll play the whole thing one more time. All right, so part 5 and 6 together. All right, so that is the tutorial on Silent Night. Now, you know, like I said before, you should always work parts at a time. We've broken into 6 parts, work on each part on its own, learn how to combine the 2 parts. I have plenty of videos on how to practice a piece. You should check those out. They will help you a lot. So let me run through the song one more time just so you can hear it, and then I will let you go. So here it is. Alright, so thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Please subscribe if you haven't done so yet. If you ever have questions, have a song request, drop a comment or email me directly at digitalpianoschool@gmail.com. I hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much for watching.